Hi there, my name's Adrian, and in this lesson I'm going to be introducing you to the concept of bar chords. Now, learning about bar chords is usually the next big hurdle that you have to face as a guitar player after you've learned the very basics. So maybe you've been playing guitar for a few months, you will have learned your basic open position chords, your G's, C's and D's and so forth. Hopefully you'll be able to strum your way through a few simple songs. The next step for you, I would suggest, would be to learn about bar chords, and I think you'll find that in doing so you'll open up a lot more possibilities on the instrument. You'll be able to play many more different songs, and you'll start to make that transition from beginner into becoming a bit more of a serious player. So first things first, what is a bar chord and why should you learn them? Now, if you've just been playing with open chords, after a while you're going to start to find that a bit limiting, and the reason for that is there are certain chords that you won't be able to play as chords down in the first position of the guitar using open strings. If you've got a song and there's an E flat chord required, or you need to play a C sharp minor, you're not really going to be able to do it in any easy way down in this part of the guitar, and that's where the idea of bar chords comes in. They're called bar chords because we're using one of our fingers to press down several notes at the same time. So our first finger, for instance, is acting like a bar to press down several notes on the guitar at the same time. And in doing so, we create a chord which is a movable shape. So with this one configuration of our fingers, we can just shift it horizontally up and down the neck to get different chords. And in that sense, bar chords are really great and really easy way to get lots of mileage out of a single chord shape. We just need to learn this one shape and we've got 12 different chords we can play with it just by shifting it up and down the guitar. The slight downside is that bar chords, initially at least, are a bit tricky to play and will take a bit of practice and patience to get the hang of. But I'm going to try and make it as painless as possible in the course of this lesson. So let's take a bit more of a detailed look at how to play these things. The type of bar chord I'm going to be looking at in this lesson is what's known as an Eform bar chord, because it's derived from our basic first position E major chord, which I hope all of you already know how to play. So let's take that chord as our starting point. Now, supposing we wanted to take the notes in this chord and move them higher up the guitar and play an F chord, for instance. What we need to do is to take every note in this chord and move it up one fret on the guitar. So it would be easy enough to move our three fingers one fret higher. Then we have that kind of sound, which is not an F chord sound. And the reason for that is in our initial E chord there are also some open strings. We've got an open E, B and high E, and those notes also need to be made higher. So how could we do that? One solution would be to use a capo, and I've got my capo here. I could put a capo at the first fret like that. Then I could play my E chord, but it's now sounding as an F chord because every note in that initial E chord has been made one fret higher. That's one way of playing an F chord. Now, supposing we wanted to play this F chord without using a capo, and that's where this concept of bar chords comes in, because we can actually use our first finger to press down several notes at the same time and to act as a type of capo. So if we press down our first finger at the first fret and then put our other fingers down in that E chord configuration, we have our F chord played as a bar chord. I suppose one way you could look at this is if you've got your initial E chord, you'd need to re-finger that chord. So instead of having fingers 2 and 3 here, you'd put fingers 3 and 4 at the second fret there. Finger number 2 would play at the first fret on the third string. You could shift those notes one fret higher, then your first finger is now freed up to play the bar at the first fret. You've got your F chord. And the beauty of this chord shape is it now involves no open strings. It's therefore a movable shape. So our fingers can stay in this configuration. We can just shift it horizontally up the neck to get various different chords. So let's have a go at doing this. I'm going to suggest that rather than play our first bar chord down in the first position of the guitar, we try and do it a bit higher up the neck where it's a bit easier to press down the string. So let's start by putting our first finger bar in place. I'm using my first finger here to press down across all 6 strings at the 5th fret. So I've just straightened and flattened out my first finger there. My second finger is then going to play at the 6th fret on the 3rd string. My third finger is playing the 7th fret on the 5th string, and my little finger is playing the 7th fret on the 4th string. So that's our basic bar chord grip, and I wouldn't be at all surprised if your first attempt at playing this chord sounds absolutely terrible. It's one of those things when you're learning to play bar chords is it will take a lot of determination and persistence to get it sounding good. I know when I first started trying to play bar chords, it took me absolutely ages before I could get all of the notes really clean. And I think the reason for that is that playing bar chords uses the different sets of muscles to the muscles used when you're playing your open chords. Suddenly you need to press down several notes with your first finger, so you're using new muscles in your thumb and in your forearm, and it will take some time to build up the strength in those muscles so that you can consistently get a clear chord. So I'm afraid I can offer you no great secrets or shortcuts to getting these bar chords sounding good, but I will give you a few pointers that should hopefully make the process a little bit more easy. Now the first thing to bear in mind is when you're pressing down this first finger bar, you're not actually using the very bottom flat part of your finger, you're pressing down slightly on the side of your first finger. So rather than using the underneath, you're using the outside edge of the finger, that bit there. And the reason for that is the outside edge is a little bit harder, there's less sort of fleshy muscle in that part of the finger, and you're going to be able to press down the notes a bit more cleanly. So you could think of it like you're just rolling your first finger slightly over towards the head of the guitar and playing a bit on the edge of it. With your other fingers, the usual things apply. You need to be up on the tips of your other fingers, and you need to be making sure that you're not bumping into the adjacent strings so that all 6 notes in the chord are ringing clearly. One more thing to bear in mind is the position of your thumb, which needs to be right behind the back of the neck, in the middle of the back of the neck, I guess, kind of about there. You don't want your thumb coming round over the top of the neck, which that might be a good thing when you're playing open chords or certain other chords, but for bar chords like this you want your thumb to be back behind the neck. Then the usual drill applies when you're learning any new chord. You're going to strum the chord, then you're going to play the notes in the chord one at a time, just to make sure that every one of them is ringing nice and cleanly. If they're not ringing cleanly, then you'll want to just adjust your fingers or adjust the bar until you can get them consistently sounding good. So the chord we just looked at was a major chord. It's now a very easy thing to do to convert that major chord into a minor chord. Now this is not something I suggest you attempt right away. It's probably a better idea if you really get to grips with this major chord to start with, get it consistently sounding really good, and then when you feel ready you can move on and try and play this minor chord. Now in theory this is a straightforward thing to do. We're just going to play our major chord, we're going to lift up our second finger, and hey presto, we've got a minor chord. In practice it's a bit trickier because in lifting up our second finger we've got another extra note that we need to hold down with our first finger bar. So in practice I think minor bar chords are a bit tougher and require a bit more muscle strength to play than their major chords. So let me take you through the notes involved here. Our first finger is playing the 5th fret on the 6th string. Our 3rd and 4th fingers remain where they were from the major bar chord shape. Our first finger is now barring at the 5th fret on the top 3 strings, so on the 3rd string, 2nd string and the 1st string. So the notes in the chord should sound like this. And as I say, it really does take quite a lot of strength in that bar to get all these notes to ring clearly. Particularly that note on the 3rd string is sometimes difficult for people to bring out. So really do make sure that that note is coming through clearly. It's an important note because that's the note which gives the chord its minor character. One thing to bear in mind here is just the position of your first finger bar. You may find that you need to just adjust it slightly by moving it up towards the ceiling or down towards the floor so that you can get that 3rd string note to ring without any buzzes. I think everybody's is physically a little bit different, so your hand position might not be exactly the same as mine, but just experiment until you get this chord sounding consistently good. Another thing is some people you see using their 2nd finger to support the 1st finger, so pressing down with the 1st finger, also pressing down with the 2nd finger up against it, kind of like that, which is fine to do as well. You can just get a little bit of extra pressure down there in the bar, but you don't have to do that. You may find that you can do it without, in which case you can just let your 2nd finger kind of hover around in the middle, something like that. So we have our basic major and minor bar chord shapes, and as I said at the start of the lesson, these are all movable chords, meaning that you can take the same configuration of fingers, move it higher or lower on the neck to get various different chord names. In fact, with just these 2 chord shapes you can play 12 different major chords and 12 different minor chords, which is pretty good going really just from those 2 shapes. And that's the beauty of bar chords, is that you can learn one simple shape and get an awful lot of mileage out of it. Now there's one more thing I want to talk about in this lesson, and that's the names of these various bar chords you can play, and you're going to need to learn those so that you can apply them in practice and use them in songs. So it's a fairly straightforward process, and we're going to need to know the names of the notes on the low E string of the guitar, because whenever you're playing one of these bar chords, the note you're playing with your 1st finger on the low E string is what's known as the root note of the chord, and it's that note which gives the chord its name. So let me take you through that. You're going to need to know your musical alphabet. If you don't already know that, it runs from the letter A through to G and then it repeats again. In between those letter names we've got what are known as sharps and flats. So let me just demonstrate on the guitar. We know that the lowest string on the guitar is an E, so the 1st fret on the low E string is the note F. So that's going to be our root note, and then we could play a major bar chord, that's an F major bar chord or just an F. The minor shape there, we've got an F minor bar chord. If we move 1 fret higher, we've got what's known as an F sharp. So again, we could apply that to our bar chord. There's an F sharp bar chord, F sharp minor. Next note, the 3rd fret on the low E is a G. So again, we've got G major bar chord, G minor. Incidentally, the F sharp can also be referred to as a G flat. It's got 2 different names. Usually when you're going from low up to high, you'll make a note sharp. So if you're going from F higher, you'll call that F sharp. If you're going from high down to low, you'll flatten a note for you. So you've got G at the 3rd fret and G flat at the 2nd fret. But I wouldn't worry too much about that. Just be aware that that note at the 2nd fret there has got 2 names. It's F sharp or it's G flat. So let's continue on up the neck. At the 4th fret, we're going from G. We've now got G sharp there, also referred to as A flat. The 5th fret, we've got A. That's the root note of the chords we were playing earlier. So we were playing an A major, A minor. 6th fret, we've got A sharp or B flat. 7th fret, we've got B. 8th fret, we've got C. Notice that B goes straight to C without a sharp or a flat. That's what's known as a naturally occurring half step. Not actually quite sure why that is, that there's not a sharp or a flat between those two. That's something I probably should know as a music teacher and a guitar teacher, but but just one of those things that you have to remember. There's no sharp or flat between B and C. Just the same as on a piano, there's no black note between the notes B and C. We've got C at the 8th fret. At the 9th fret we've got C sharp or D flat. 10th fret we've got D. 11th fret we've got D sharp or E flat. 12th fret we've got E. And then 13th fret we've come full circle, we've got another F but an octave higher. And it's actually a bit too high to practically be able to play bar chords on an acoustic guitar, but you could probably manage it on an electric guitar. So with this knowledge of the notes on the low E string of the guitar, you should now be able to play any major and any minor chord. It might take you a bit of time in practice to get to grips with this and to actually memorise the names and the locations of the chords, but in theory this is something you should be able to now do. Let me give you a couple of examples of how it would work. Say we want to play a B flat chord. The first thing we need to do is to locate our B flat root note. So you would count up the notes on the low E string. We've got E, F, F sharp, G, G sharp, A sharp, which is the same as B flat. So that's our root note at the 6th fret. We want a major chord, so we're going to hold down our major shape. And there we have it, B flat major, or we just need to say B flat chord. If you wanted to play a B flat minor, you just lift up your 2nd finger and you've got B flat minor. And you can apply that same process to any chord, major or minor chord, that you might come across. You find the root note and then adjust the quality of the chord, whether it's major or whether it's minor. So that's it for this lesson. I realise I've covered quite a lot of ground here, and it will take you a long time to digest all of this stuff. Initially you've got the physical battle of just getting these chords to sound good, which will take a lot of patience and persistence. Then you've got the more theoretical side of things, learning the names of those root notes, memorising where these chords are so that you can easily use them in practice. But as I said, it's work that's well worth putting in because it really will open up lots of new and exciting areas for you as a guitarist. The next step would be to learn a few songs that use bar chords, of which there are many, many great songs. I'll try and put a list of suggested bar chord songs up on my website. Maybe I'll film a few bar chord song lessons as well at some point. But that's it for now. Hope you enjoyed the lesson, and I'll hope to see you for another one very soon. Bye bye.